G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and today we're going to be drawing mouths and lips. Now I have done a video tutorial of this in the past and unfortunately I am told by many people that it's not working anymore. And so rather than re-upload the old one from 2 years ago, I thought I'd give you a brand new take on the exact same approach to how I draw mouths and lips, as I feel like in the last 2 years I've improved somewhat. So hopefully it will be something of a better tutorial for you anyway. So we're going to start off in the same way that I did in the last mouths and lips tutorial, with 4 variations stylistically. So here on the very left, I've got a very cartoony character. Then ranging as we go from left to right, we see a more cartoony comic sort of character, and then we have much more of a comic book sort of character, and then to the right, something of a more realistic-ish character. So he's not, you know, photorealistic, because that's not my specialty. I'm kind of more in the cartoony comic area of things, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So first of all, we start off with this cartoony character, and just in approaching a general sort of aesthetic for mouths, it's much simpler than the others, and there are lots of different ways you can do it. You can do those really little cartoony ones with the big upper lip, little dimple on the side, things like that. So there are lots of different approaches, but overall it's very simple, where you basically have a line for the mouth and sometimes a little line under here just to indicate the thickness of the bottom lip. So for now we're going to go with a big upper lip, an overbite as they call it, and then a little dimple on the side and a little a line underneath the lower lip just to indicate a bit of size. So next we have here this semi-cartoony comic character, and this is where things start to get a little more realistic, because we can't really, I mean, we can do the overbite and it is stylistically cool, but in general we have more limitations. So let's draw the same overbite. We've got that sort of thing happening, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but you can also go in a more what do you call it, not realistic, but you know, less cartoony route if you wish, and it ends up looking all right. And you just really go simply with a line and then a line underneath. And now we're getting a bit more comic-esque, right? So for something like this, again, same sort of route. And for males, there's a less sort of accentuated way of drawing mouths, at least in general and in my experience, because the females have much more prominent lips. It's a mark of femininity. So if I were to draw the top lip, all of a sudden he looks quite feminine, and that's just the way that art has evolved, I suppose. So here, if I'm drawing a little more realistic character, I can shape this line. See how I got that little dip there and then the little dip there, right? That's a way you can indicate a top lip without actually having to draw one, and you can just make the line slightly thicker, and then we just shape that bottom bit, right? And that allows us to get the basic shape of the mouth without having to draw the top half of the lip and make him look too feminine. So we're starting to shape it more realistically, but not show things like the actual top lip, right? Now, in cases like this on the right, where we're going to draw the top lip, first I shape the middle line, and then if I draw the top lip, I shade it quite a bit darker and have it quite thin on a male. So for a female, I still shade the top lip darker, but have more thickness. Whereas with the male here, I draw in my top lip and bottom lip, but I really keep the top lip thin and unaccentuated, so it looks a little more natural and less feminine. It still looks quite feminine, and you'll notice that if I go in here and shade the top lip very quickly, that turns it from a very feminine mouth into just a bit more of a detailed mouth, right? So when it's shaded darker, It kind of creates a silhouette of the top lip rather than having it as an individually sort of segmented section. So these are just 4 really quick, simple examples as to some of the different stylistic approaches you can take to drawing mouths on your cartoon characters and comic characters. And we're going to start exploring some of the different details and various approaches to drawing mouths. So for starters, I have these 3 segments, and I'm going to approach the male mouth and the female mouth. And we're going to be starting off focusing on lips, and then after this section, we're going to work with teeth and tongues and various angles. And that's where things get a little more complicated, but also a lot more fun. So as we have done before, I'm going to start off with the male mouth. Now, something that I like to do commonly, if the mouth is stretched wide, I like to add just a little dimple in this area here, right? So for example, I draw that little dip in the middle of the mouth. So these mouths that we're going to be drawing for now and for the rest of the tutorial are going to sit in the comic book sort of style of things. So I'll draw a top lip, but I'll just allude to it. I won't really accentuate it. And see, these are the little dimples I'm talking about. They're not actual mouth dimples. They're not like here, but they just indicate that the side of the mouth comes into an area of skin that has some mass. Okay, so now with the bottom lip, I'm going to thicken my pen tool just a bit, because that's more of a focus with the male mouth. And you can see how very quickly I've already got the mouth that I'm looking to put together. Now, like I said before, we want our top lip to be darker than our bottom lip. Reason really is the fact that the top lip is on an angle, and we'll get to that when we get to the side view, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So we're going to move along now. That's our front view. We're going to go now to our 3/4 view. Draw a little dimple here on the side. Really thin top lip. Nice and accentuated bottom lip. And then once again, shading our top lip. And you can tell that this is a male mouth. Now, in real life, the top lips of men aren't necessarily a lot thinner than the top lips of females, but like I said, it's just kind of an accentuation of femininity. So over here on the right, we see the silhouette, the profile of the mouth, and you can see that the top lip is tucked under like that. So when drawing the lips, the top lip is on that angle where it's somewhat, what's the word? I haven't got the word for it, but you know what I mean. Light coming in on this angle is going to hit the bottom lip, but it's not going to hit the top lip. So that means when we add a bit of shading, it just accentuates that and makes it pop a little bit, and it in a very simple, clean and easy to do way, makes it look fairly refined and finished. So there are our male mouths. Now we're going to draw our female mouths, and we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between them. So first of all, curves are good. Women are good with curves. And so men, I tend to draw the bottom lip with a bit of a rigid approach. You can see that there's almost 3 segments to this line, and they're almost 3 straight lines, whereas with females, it's all about the curves. So with this middle bit, really make that pop out compared to the male one. It stands out a lot more. Okay, so we really stick that out. Now the mouth is divided into several sections. We have the top lip and bottom lip, and I tend to divide them into 2 parts and make this part pop out and this part pop out, then this part pop out and this part pop out. It's almost like there are 4 sections, right? But we also want the top lip and bottom lip to look uniform and like they're meant to go together. We don't want them to look silly. So on the male lip, the bottom lip I treat as one broad section, whereas the female bottom lip, I kind of give a bit of body to those, what do you call them, lines, shapes. And then once again, we shade the top lip. Now something you can do very quickly to add a little bit more femininity is do this, a really light little half drawn circle and another smaller one there. And they just act as highlights, which essentially make it look like the lip is shiny. And that's just something you can do to make it look like that it's wearing, that the female is wearing lipstick without actually having to shade the lipstick, just those little circles there. So now we're on the 3/4 view, same thing, really accentuate that middle dimply thing. I keep saying dimple, but it's not a dimple, is it? It's, don't know what it is, but we all have it. There's that little bit in the top lip that kind of sticks down a little bit. Okay, so now we're drawing the top lip, and like before, it really sticks out a lot more, especially compared to the male one, because it's a feature. Over here on the male lip, you can see that there really isn't much showing off that it's the 3/4 angle, whereas here on the female lip, we're really sticking the lips out and making something of a natural duck face. Now, we don't want to overdo it, but you can see what I mean in the sense that there's this ridge in here, right? So we have it pop under, like it does on the side view, and then out from the bottom. Okay, now you'll notice that I tend to not be militant about making these lines of the top and bottom lip meet the actual line of the mouth. I tend to feel like if everything's drawn out specifically, it looks a bit silly, because in the end, the skin of the lips are the same material almost as the skin of our our face. And so I tend to allude to those lines joining up without actually having to draw them, and it ends up looking decent. Okay, so there we go again. We've got the 3/4 view done, and the next thing I'm going to do is shade the upper lip, and then after I shade the upper lip, I add a little highlight on the bottom lip. I'll just change the size so it's a little more on the top of the lip. There we go. And then our last one is the side view. So I'm quite happy with how these are coming along, and you can see how very quickly, with little difference in detail, we can see which is the male mouth and which is the female mouth. So same thing here, we have a similar silhouette with a female mouth, but the difference is obviously that the female one is quite a bit rounder and curvier. Now, there are always exceptions to these rules, of course. These are just generalizations and just sort of tips that I use to keep things the way I like to have them. And you can take it or leave it, but this is what I do. So again, shade the upper lip, makes a very, very immediate difference. And then we add a little highlight to the bottom lip. So there we go. I'm going to zoom out, and you can see how instantly we've got male and female variations of the same angles of the lips with very little detail, but we're communicating what we're trying to get done. So the next thing I want to talk about is deconstructing the mouth. So over here on the right, we have some skulls, which I'll explain to when I get to them in a moment. But for now, I'm going to start here on the left, where I have some various segments of the mouth all pulled apart. And as I draw the line work on top of them, I'm going to discuss them. So first is the upper lip. Like I said, we have this dimple under here, and then this is an open upper lip. So we're actually showing the inside of the upper lip as it's open. And that is something that we're going to have to get used to doing, because when we draw open mouths, we have to start seeing them as three-dimensional things. Start seeing them as objects that have shape, because we wrap things around each other. Okay, so this is my upper lip, and once again, it's a shaded one, but I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Now, teeth. This is where things get a little more interesting, because it really depends on your style and what you're trying to convey, how much detail you want. I very rarely draw individual teeth like this. When I do, I try and keep it really thin in the line work and not overdo it, because it tends to look a bit silly with the more detail you add, especially if the rest of the image is more comic-esque. Even in paintings I've done, like oil paintings in high school and things like that, where it's tried to be more realistic and things like that. It's the more detail you add to the teeth, it can end up looking very silly very quickly. And so even in paintings, I tend to allude to the detail in the teeth. I would never go more detailed than this, and if I was working with color, I wouldn't use lines. I would add the detail with just various shades. So now to the tongue. When drawing the line work, I simply have these two main lines to communicate this groove in the middle of the tongue. So I have one on the outside and then one on the inside. And then I draw the front of the tongue, but I rarely draw the front of the tongue, and we'll get to the tongue later because when it's all constructed in the mouth, first I sort of figure out where the teeth are, then I draw the lips around the teeth, and then I draw the tongue inside the mouth behind the teeth. So the tongue is one of the last things that you draw when it's shown. And then finally we have the bottom teeth here. Notice a simple approach you can take with teeth, and we'll get to more simple versions of teeth later, but if you want to draw detailed teeth, I tend to draw the line shape around the top with the grooves, and then add the detail simply by doing this, drawing these shapes. I don't know what you'd call them, semicircles almost, a little stretched ellipses, just to complete those shapes, and that's done. So that's quite a simple way to draw the detailed version of teeth. And then finally the bottom lip, which, like I said, I divide into two parts, this and this, right? And then it's almost like I have this long stretch of skin that I wrap around those two puffy shapes. So there you go, that is the deconstructed mouth. Now when drawing a mouth, a three-dimensional mouth on a skull on various angles and shapes with various mouth expressions, we work around the teeth. So you don't always draw the mouth first because the teeth can really drastically change angle. You can see how with this front on pose, the skull has the teeth quite straight on, whereas here, looking up, the teeth all of a sudden take that shape, and then here, with the skull looking down, the teeth have a very different shape. And so first we decide what expression we want, and after we've drawn the construction lines, and while they wouldn't be this detailed, I'm just kind of having them here so you can see what we would be working around. Let's draw a simple nose, and we're going to draw a smiling character, okay? So let's say his mouth opens up. So I draw the shape of the mouth first, and you can see that I've already made room for where the teeth show, and they stop there. So I'm going to shade all that in. I'll leave a little area in here for where the tongue would be, and then I'm just going to fill in the top lip area and the bottom lip. And very quickly we've got the finished result, which works around the teeth, and the teeth are in a realistic sort of position. Now this is a little trickier. When the skull is on such a drastic angle, it becomes quite difficult to make it work. So let's draw on this angle a raging, screaming head, as if looking up at the sky, screaming in rage, right? So what I tend to do is the mouth is really stretched. So I draw the mouth like this, but because the mouth is only so big, you can only open your mouth so much, it really stretches along here and actually hides some of the side teeth because it's pulled down so far. Okay, so we're pulling the mouth down and then wrapping around those teeth. Okay, so now that I've got the shape of the mouth, I'm going to draw the teeth, position of the teeth, and add a section for the tongue. And now I'm going to add the top lip. Okay, now it looks a little strange, but when the skin and nose and the features of the face are drawn on top of it, and everything's kind of thickened up, and we actually have, let's say, the chin there and everything like that, it starts to come together a little more evenly. I'm just going to make this a bit smaller because I think I went a bit too big, and you get the idea. Okay, and then here I'm just going to draw a smiling face. So first I'm going to draw the nose because this cavity isn't where actually the nose is. We have the nose come down from there. And now I'm going to draw a smile. I'm first drawing the shape of the mouth, adding the teeth inside. So some of these look a little silly, and I think the main reason for that is the fact that I've really drawn the upper lips and the lower lips quite a bit without actually defining the style of the rest of the face. But you can see how shaping the mouth around the teeth and the angle that they're on is pretty pivotal to making it look convincing and work with that angle. So the last thing we're going to talk about are some poses. There's a bit of a key to communicating effective mouths, and sometimes that's just having it as muscle memory. So often you'll be catching yourself drawing the same sort of mouth on various characters, and you just want to learn to adapt those to different angles so you can actually draw from your pool of experience and knowledge on drawing mouths from mouths you've already drawn effectively, and then the ones you're weaker with you can practice and just kind of add to your vocabulary of mouth poses rather than feeling like you're making it up from scratch and working from the ground up with little confidence every time. So this is one of my more common mouth poses. It looks quite simply like this. I tend to often have a slight underbite. Reason for that being is I think it just adds a little character, and this is going to be a female mouth, so to accentuate the femininity, I'm going to really make the lips pop. Later I'm going to shade the upper lip and then add highlights. And so another thing I tend to like to do is when the mouth is quite stretched, I cut off here on the right and cut the teeth off. There we go. And another thing to keep in mind is instead of drawing all the teeth, I'll show you an example of why that looks bad. I told you I very rarely draw all the teeth. You can see how it looks a little silly. If that were drawn on a simplistic comic character, it wouldn't look so simplistic, it would look a little dumb. Okay, so this is my solution. I tend to draw a line, then have no line in the middle and have a very thin line and going to thick into the inner edge again. That is my solution. It's really simple. We don't even draw a line all the way across because that tends to look a bit silly as well, right? So I tend to draw a bit of a thin edge kind of pushing in on each side of the teeth. And that also adds a bit of a glistening look. It's almost like you can add a little shine. It looks like shiny teeth. Then of course, I'm going to shade the upper lip and for the bottom lip, add those little highlights. And all together, when we see the final piece, it looks pretty finished. You know, there's really not much more to add in there. So I'm just going to talk through some of these poses first, and then I'm going to speed up through drawing the line work over them before we finish. So this is your sort of kissy lips pose, and when I draw the line work, it's almost like when you see someone's kiss mark on a book or someone's face or whatever, we see a shape almost like this. And that's because the lips are puckered. So this is a puckered lip expression. There's a couple of side-on ones, and then there are several, like this one and this one, where the gums feature quite heavily because the mouth is really stretched. And I often do this when using a devious smile expression and really pulling up one side of the face and showing the teeth, or showing anger or rage, and it really shows that really stretched feeling, like everything's being pulled out around the teeth in anger. Then we have, of course, a seductive mouth where we show the upper lip and being licked by the tongue and being shown in front of the teeth. We never show the bottom teeth when really showing that pose. It looks a bit brutal. This is a very feminine, sort of skeptical-ish looking mouth here on the right, over here, and then some various open mouth poses and some different angles, and here's one with some spit. So I'm going to go through and draw the line work on these now, and I hope you enjoy watching the process, and we'll talk over them once I'm done. So here you are, ladies and gentlemen, this is my finished array of mouth poses, just to show sort of examples as to what I was talking about in terms of mouth positioning and lips shading and teeth detail, all that stuff, right? So you can see fairly immediately which ones are the female mouths and which ones are the male mouths. For example, these two you can see are more masculine because they don't have accentuated upper lips. They have somewhat blocky bottom lips and a little bit more rough shaping, whereas these and this one you can tell are female because of the more accentuated upper lips and the highlights on the bottom lip. So it's quite a simple method to accentuating and showing the difference between the two. Another thing that you may have picked up that I've been doing is keeping a little space between the shading of the upper lip and the line. So it essentially acts as a highlight, and that just kind of makes the upper lips pop out even more and just shows a bit of the shape. And that actually is exactly what would happen because the top of the upper lip is in an area that can be lit, whereas the bottom is much darker. In general, you can kind of see that I've used most of the methods that I've already talked over. I generally draw the shape of the mouth opening first, or the pose or the expression of the mouth, and then I draw the teeth in there and the tongue if they can be seen, and then I work the lips around them because it's almost like the lips are wrapped around the teeth and the teeth are solid. Another thing to keep in mind is that with these examples, the top teeth never move, okay? So no matter what you're doing with your pose, like in all of these poses, no matter if it's happy or angry or sad or open or closed or whatever, the top teeth are always solid no matter what position the mouth is in, because the top teeth are part of the skull and the skull stays. The jaw, however, the bottom teeth opens and can go on various angles and all this stuff, and so that's why that is something to keep in mind, because when you draw on various angles, if you're going to work with something as a staple, as something that doesn't change, it's the top teeth, work around the top teeth, then draw the bottom teeth and the lips around that and the tongue, and then you go on and then you have your finished mouth. So I hope these are some examples and some tips that you may or may not find useful. Either way, make sure if you do like them to like the video, share, favorite, subscribe, all that stuff. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you later.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy my videos. You can download the reference files from this tutorial by clicking the link in the description. And remember to share any art, animation or game you make on Newgrounds.com. Until next time, see you later.